Good evening, partners. Hope you all are doing well. I am Preeta. Today we have Mr. Ram, our head FIP, and Mr. Arun, head research with us. Nowadays, debt funds have become volatile, and at times we see negative returns, which are not expected. So let's understand from Arun as why debt funds have become so volatile and what is the way forward. So let me put to Arun to get our answers. Please feel free to raise your questions during the session through a chat box. Over to you, Arun.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot, Preeta. Thank you so much, as always, everyone, for dropping in. So while most of the times we have dealt with the equity markets in the recent past, after a long time, we are probably looking at debt funds in terms of the recent volatility. Maybe 6 months back, it was a different risk which was playing out. But we believe that there's a new not a new, but basically there's one more dimension of debt funds which probably the next 1 year will help us all understand. So the idea is to give a sense of what that is, and in terms of how can we understand it better, and also help our clients understand the overall context in terms of what to expect from debt funds over the next 1 year. So that will be the broad pretext. So before I just move on into see, one way to approach it is like I can say this is the market outlook and all that. But before that, I just thought I'll take a step back and start with some basic fundamentals so that it is helpful for us to understand and put into context, saying that what if there is a negative return? Should we worry about it? How should we look at negative returns? And in terms of when will the recovery be back and all that. So I think if we get a hang of some of the basics, then it becomes a lot more simpler for us to appreciate why some of the times we end up seeing a slight negative returns in the short run, and why eventually over a period of time those negative returns gets compensated by positive returns over a long run. Now we'll understand why that happens. Now, if you fundamentally really think about debt fund investing per se, so let's start with something which is very, very basic. Now, whenever we say that we are investing in debt funds, and net, it means that we are lending our money. So while investing in debt fund sounds a lot more complex, while in essence, what we are essentially doing is we are lending our money. Now, what the debt funds do is essentially that they collect the money on our behalf, and then they lend it on our behalf, and they also make sure that they evaluate whom to lend and the collection and all that they do. So, but net, the way to think about it is that we are lending our money. So whenever we lend our money, so let's say a friend of ours comes to us and then asks for some money, or let's say we are lending it to a bank, which is otherwise called the FD. The first question that we ask is, what is the percentage of return that you will give me? Because obviously I am parting with my money, and you say that you will pay me back after 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, whatever is the time frame. But so you will obviously have to compensate me for that. So in debt parlance, that is what is referred to as the YTM, right? While it sounds complex, net, all it means is that our money is basically lent by the debt fund, which is on behalf of us. The money is lent to a host of a group of companies or the government, and net the aggregate interest rate. So let's say they are lending it to company A for, let's say, 6%, company B for, let's say, 5%, and net at an aggregate level, at 100 rupees level, what is the overall interest rates that I can expect? And this is on a yearly basis. So all the interest rates are given on a yearly basis. So this is a number which is represented by what is called the YTM. Now, technically, if you really look at it, like if you go to a bank, the FD rates are what we are probably expecting over the next 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. And similarly, when we go to a debt fund and we are lending our money, ideally it should be the underlying borrowing rate of the borrowers, or net for us, it's like at what rate they are borrowing. That is the amount that we should probably expect as our returns. Now, obviously, debt funds don't do this for free. They charge a small expense, which is called the expense ratio. So net, if you subtract the YTM, so let's say YTM is 5%, and on top of it, let's say the expense ratio is 0.5%. Net, you will end up with a 1 year return expectation of somewhere close to 4.5%. Okay, so most of the funds right now would have YTM somewhere close to around 4 to 5, depending on whichever category you are, and the expense ratios will be somewhere close to roughly plus or minus 0.5%. So roughly we are looking at YTMs in the range of 3.5 to 4.5%, depending on whichever category. Yeah, few categories might have a higher number. So the other way to really look at it is, while this can be the rough 1 year return expectation, so this is one component of the return. The way to if you really split it across, because 1 year is again a slightly longer time frame, the way to really think about this is, if we divide it by 12, we can also get a rough sense of what to expect on a 1 month basis from the stable component, which is also called, this component is also called the accrual. So okay, from net YTM, what is the return to be expected? So I've given in the bottom saying that if your net YTM is roughly around 6%, you can expect monthly returns to be around 0.5%. And if your net YTM is around 5%, you can expect monthly returns to be roughly around 0.42%. And if your net YTM is around 4%, you can roughly expect 0.33%. Now, for this number can be calculated for any fund that you are recommending for your client, so that roughly you can tell the client that, sir, madam, this is the rough number or rough returns, positive returns that you should be expecting over the next 1 month. Okay, so this is the first component. Now, obviously, if it was only this component, then debt funds would have been as simple as what we see in FDs, and it will always be a positive return, and we will have no cases of volatility. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, we have a second component. The second component is what happens because of change in interest rates. Now, unlike an FD, where once you invest and then you only remove your money post the whichever is the period for which you are investing, debt funds are technically, you can think of it as a everyday sellable FD. So while you invest in a 2-year FD, think about it as debt funds are technically like an FD which can be sold in the market each and every day. So which means that as and when your interest rates either move up or move down, correspondingly the value of your underlying debt papers will also keep changing. I'm not going too much into this thing. Obviously, most of you will definitely know this. So the basic concept is that if your interest rates are going up, then there will be a negative impact on your NAV or the underlying bond price. And if the interest rates are going down, then there'll be a positive impact or positive return on your underlying bond papers, and subsequently your entire bond fund will also either go up or down based on the interest rate movement. Now, how do we? So the most important part is, how much will it go up? So let's say interest rates tomorrow go up by 1%. How much will my fund go up or down? Right? If interest rates go up 1%, then my fund will go down. So that is clear with the inverse relation. But the key question is, by what extent will it go up or down? Right? So now in that, so how to figure that out? There is a number called modified duration, which is provided for all the funds. Now, what it simply tells you is that it tells you the extent of impact that your fund will face if your interest rates are moving up by 1% or moving down by 1%. So what technically you need to do is, whatever is the change in yields. So let's say if it goes up by 0.5%, then your impact, and let's say the fund is running a modified duration of 2, then you multiply. So 2 is basically the multiplier. Okay, so 2 modified duration of 2 will mean that your 0.5% impact change in yields will get multiplied by 2, which means it will be a 1% impact. Now, 1%, will it be negative or positive, will depend on whether your yields are moving up or moving down. If they move down, then you will have if the yields go up, then you will have a negative 1% impact on your fund. And if your yields go down by 1%, you will have a positive 1% impact on your fund. So if you really combine both of these together, which is the first level of net YTM, which is your 1 year approximate expectation, and probably if you do it on a monthly basis, you will roughly see that most of the funds right now are between the 0.3% to 0.4% range. So this is the stable component. And on top of it, if let's say the yields go up or down over the next 1 month, that portion will also get added. So this is the second component, which is the slightly unstable component. And then there is the first component, which is the more stable component. If you add both of these together, net you end up with the returns. So that is as far as interpreting the returns go. Now, the way I really understood this is through a simple graph, this is an example of a seesaw. So as you can see that the yield movement is there on the left, and then depending on where your fund is, so your funds can probably, your liquid funds will be somewhere here where the modified duration is very, very low. Okay, which means that irrespective of how much ever higher is the change in yields, your impact will be very, very low, because you can see that for the same amount of interest rates going up, the impact on any fund which is positioned here is very, very low. Whereas if a fund is positioned here, the impact will be really high. Okay, which is nothing but the modified duration. So higher the modified duration, higher is the impact. Okay, now the impact can be negative or positive, which will primarily depend on where the yields are going, whether the yields are going down or whether the yields are going up. Now, in the last 2 years or 3 years, if you see last 1.5 years, you would have seen that most of the yields have dramatically dropped down till let's say till Jan of this particular year. So which means that this lever was pulled down, and hence any fund which was all the funds would have got a return of more than their net YTM. So if interest rates did not change, you would have got net YTM. But because interest rates fell over the last 1.5 years, most of the funds made phenomenal returns. So they made their net YTM, and on top of it, they made the multiplier effect of the change in yield. So let's say the yields roughly came down close to 2 to 3%, depending on whatever is the time frame that you're looking at. And so let's say if some fund was running a modified duration of 2 multiplied by, let's say, 2% fall in yields, that will be like 4% kicker. And let's say you had positioned for a 8-year modified duration, then it's 8 into 2, so you would have got a 16% kicker. So net, that's the role of a debt fund manager, or for us, that's how we understand funds in terms of where we should position them. So if we think that interest rates are going to come down, usually you can go slightly on the higher modified duration, so that as and when it comes, you get a significant kicker in returns. And if the interest rates are expected to go up, you want to reduce and you want to keep your funds at a very, very low modified duration, so that the overall impact does not pull away a lot of returns from your original net YTM. So that is all as far as debt funds are concerned. So all you need to take a call is, one, what is my net YTM, so that you roughly get a hang of what is the return to be expected. And if you divide it by 12, you will get the roughly monthly return that you should expect. The second question that you should answer is my interest rates roughly expected to go up or go down? What is the overall environment in which I am dealing with debt funds? If it is an environment where interest rates are going to go down, it means that you can go a little aggressive on the modified duration. You can play. Usually, we prefer playing at. We stick to the 2 to 4 segment, mostly 2 to 3, because we have seen that it's a ideal sweet spot where, like, over an entire market cycle, these funds end up doing really well. But some people also, like, want to play these interest rate cycles, and then they go like really high on. So all the gilt funds, long duration funds, all those funds will have, let's say, 6, 7, 8, and even they might sometimes have close to around 10, 11, 12 as a modified duration, which means that you will get almost equity like returns during the phases where interest rates dramatically go down. So that is one way to play it. And again, it also means that when interest rates go up, if you're caught up with those funds, you will get significantly hit, because the impact will be very, very large compared to a very, very low duration, low modified duration kind of a fund. So net, the decision of where to position your clients' portfolios will have to be primarily decided based on this call, in terms of how do you expect the yields to change. So for us, again, coming back to the basics, we will really need to figure out, saying, what is the environment that we are looking at, and based on that, we can position our clients' portfolios on either on the shorter end or on the longer end based on what is our call on this. Okay, so this is how we do it. Credit risk technically, duration is one form of increasing risk, while if you can increase your duration when you expect interest rates to come down and reduce your modified duration when you expect interest rates to go up. The other way to improve returns is increase the net YTM, which is nothing but you lend to slightly lower rated borrowers, which means that they will give you a higher YTM. So right now, let's say AAA YTMs would be around 4 to 5%. A credit risk fund might give us somewhere close to 6 to 7%, or maybe even up to 8%, depending on how much of a risk the fund manager is willing to take. So this is the second legitimate way to make return. So net, if you really look at it, it's as simple as that. What is the modified duration that you want to play, and what is the net YTM that you want to play in terms of how high a credit risk do you want to take. So these two will predominantly determine your returns. And again, like, you will need to find the context and then position yourself accordingly, right? We have been avoiding credit risk for at least the last 1 year, not because we don't like credit risk, but primarily because liquidity risk is something that we are not comfortable handling. So that we will anyway, I'll explain it later. Now you might think that this is all right, but is it like too theoretical and all that? I'll give you a simple example of how to interpret return. So let's say let's take the month of January 21, where we have the entire data right from starting net YTM and ending net YTM. So if we look at it, HDFC short-term fund had a starting net YTM of close to around 4.57. Okay, so let's say we did not know that what was the return going to be after the end of the month, but we know that it has 4.57. So which means that the first component is simple, right? We said net YTM divided by 12, which is 4.57% divided by 12, roughly comes close to 0.38% or 0.4%. Okay, so for whoever is your client who is invested in this fund at the beginning of January, the returns that he or she should normally expect should be roughly close to the 0.4% mark. Okay, this is the stable component. Now, as I told you, there is also the second component which can either detract from this number or which can increase this number. So which is a plus. So the second component will also have to be added. The second component, as I told you, is pretty simple. If interest rates or yields come down, then we will have a higher number. We'll have a higher return over and above this. If interest rates go up, then we'll have a lower number. So now HDFC short-term fund has a modified duration of 2.6. So whatever is the interest rate change, that will get magnified by 2.6 times. Okay. Now during the month, there was close to around 17 bips, which was the increase in interest rate. So what did we say? When there is an increase in interest rate or increase in yields, what it usually means is that there'll be a negative impact in the second component. So how can we quantify that? Very simple. What is a modified duration? 2.6. So we just multiply that 0.17%, which was the increase in yields, that you multiply it by 2.61. Net, it knocks off close to around 0.44%. Okay, it is a negative symbol because your interest rates have moved up. If instead of plus, instead of going up, if it had come down by, let's say, the same 0.17%, you would have seen an addition of 0.44%. So how do we set a return expectation? The return expectation is you just add up both. So once you add both, so 0.4% or 0.38% was your stable component. Unfortunately, yields have moved up, so it again knocked off 0.44% out of this. And net, you ended up with a return of close to around 0.06%. If you look at the actual return, it is somewhere close to a similar number, right? So this is how you put in context. Now, if instead of 2.6, let's say the fund was a gilt fund which was running somewhere close to around 7 or 6 as a modified duration, then obviously the negative returns will be very, very high. Okay, so the most important point is that whenever we select debt funds for our clients, do not set the return expectation based on the past. Okay, all that we'll have to look at is what is my net YTM and what is my expectation on the interest rates or on the yields. Is it a yield rising environment or is it a yield declining environment? And based on that, your returns will be either more than what is your net YTM, or it will be slightly lesser than what is your net YTM. If interest rates more or less stay at a stable level, it will roughly be around the net YTM. So this is how we can put in context. Now you might say, is this only valid for 1 month? We have done the same thing for different months. Okay, so what we did was we took the last 5 months just to illustrate you, saying that how you can put a context. Now this you can do it for any fund, right? So the easiest part is you get the starting YTM, and then you get the expense ratio, and then you subtract it, you get the net YTM. So roughly the fund was running somewhere between 5.5% to it came down to 4.5 in Jan, but roughly the 4.5 to 5.5 was the range, which means that the expected returns in September was close to 0.46%. Okay, and then the yields were coming down. As I told you, in the last 1 year, the yields were predominantly coming down. So for that particular month, the yields were roughly down by 0.05%. Now the other question is, where do we get as to exactly how much it falls? Now, unfortunately, this is not a precise science. So obviously, the fund managers will know precisely how each and every underlying bonds papers are moving down or up in terms of their yields, but we only have to get a rough estimate of the number, because there are too many underlying factors. Like there might be some funds, some bonds which are maturing. The fund manager might consciously move out of certain papers and then try to reduce duration. So there are a lot of things which can happen within the fund within the 1 month. So all these are rough numbers, but this will broadly give you a sense of why is the returns so and so. So let's say the 0.46 is my returns and I got 0.5. We will roughly find out saying why is the return close to that, or if there is any significant deviation. For example, in this month it's 1.3%. We can also figure out why is the significant deviation. Roughly we can say that it means that in this particular month the yield should have come down definitely. So the rough yield which came down was close to minus 0.3%. For this, I have taken the 3-year GSEC bonds as a rough proxy. But yeah, but broadly it will give you a rough sense. So don't hold me saying that I took the 3-year GSEC, it is differing by 0.05 and all that. See, the idea is not that you will get a precise number, but for explaining to your client saying that, sir, last month you got 0.5, this month you got 1.28. It's not because of any magic. It's just that the 0.46 is constant, right? The only difference is last month the interest rates, the yields did not fall much. This month the yields fell by almost 0.3%. And so whenever yields fall, it multiplies itself by the modified duration. So it magnifies this impact by 2.7 times. And it added almost 0.9% to your returns this month because the yields fell. So which also means the other way around, that if the yields had increased by 0.3%, this number would have been far, far lower. Okay, so this is how you can see that for each and every month, our return expectation based on what happened in the 3-year GSEC bonds, GSEC yields, and the actual returns are very, very close to each. There'll be some deviation because we will exactly not be able to figure out unless the fund manager tells us. But yeah, but this is more than enough for us to understand what goes behind the return. So the key underlying point is very simple, that when it comes to debt funds, there are two components. One is the net YTM by 12 months, which will give you the monthly stable returns, and this will almost get added every month. And on top of it, you will need to add the impact because of interest rates moving up or down. So which we have seen that when interest rates move down, you will have a negative impact. So in this month, you saw that, interest rates went up, and hence there is a negative impact of close to 0.4. Now, if this modified duration was lower at 1, then the impact would only be minus 0.16%. Now it's getting multiplied by 2.6. But again, it's a both-way street, right? When interest rates were going down, you got the benefit of excess returns. And when interest rates go up, you will get most of these benefits will also get taken away, right? So net, which is why people say over a long run you will end up making decent returns in debt funds, because these interest rate cycles will average out each other. So the positive returns that you get, so let's say this month you got a 0.86% return, this month you knocked off 0.42, so you're still plus 0.4%, provided you had entered at October 20, right? So the real problem is for clients who entered just in the beginning of Jan, because for them it will be like they're immediately seeing a negative return, and if it is a higher modified duration fund, they would have seen a significantly lower number. So that's the key. Okay, so now net, it essentially means that there are three risks that we must watch out for. One is liquidity risk, which is nothing but the fund manager is not able to sell the underlying papers. This happens only in the lower rated papers. So in net, it means that liquidity and credit risk are more or less closely related, especially in the Indian context. So while we are not averse to taking credit risk, but because Indian credit markets have huge liquidity problem, which means that the fund manager might do a great job of picking good underlying papers, but net, if the underlying investors panic for some reason, being an open-ended fund, what happened to Franklin can happen to any fund. There is absolutely nothing stopping the Franklin event from happening to any other credit risk fund, because underlying papers are very illiquid. So this is a risk that we will want to avoid. But where will if you are taking this particular risk, this will get reflected in a higher net YTM number. So instead of 0.46, you might end up at 0.6 or 0.7% every month if you're taking. So as long as the risk doesn't play out, you will end up with a higher return. The third point is where we say the rising interest rate risk. So as long as the interest rates are going down, not a problem, you get excess returns. But if the interest rates go up, you get a negative impact on your original stable net YTM returns, right? So this is the three risks that we are talking about. So first two, we are not too big fans of that. But third is something that all of us inevitably have to take up at some point in time, because all debt funds will have some bit of rising interest rate risk, unless and until you are stuck with a liquid fund or an ultra short term fund. So broadly, it means that we'll have to take a call on what is the interest rate environment. Is it going to be a rising interest rate environment, or is it going to be a falling interest rate environment like what we saw in 2020? Now, our broad call is this, that over the next 1 to 2 years, we expect a rising yield environment. Okay, so that's the first point, which means that obviously it means that we will have to be okay with a lot of volatility. Okay, so broad call is that we are entering a rising yield environment, and this can happen over the next few quarters. It can be for 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years. No, none of us will be able to predict the timelines, but broadly over the next 1 year, we are set up for a rising yield environment. So that's the point number one. Second is we are pretty much, the rate cut cycle is behind us. So all the excess returns we saw 7, 8, 9, 10% for most of the funds, that period is over. So we will have to prepare for two things. One, relatively higher volatility in all our clients' debt portfolios. And then second is slightly lower return expectation. The 8%, 9% is not possible because you're starting with YTMs at 4%, 5%. So net, you have to revolve around an expectation between 4 to 5%. And based on how the interest rates, how the yields move, or predominantly it's going to be a yield increasing cycle. But as to what is the speed, how gradual it is, will depend on, will determine the volatility that all our funds will go through. And again, the third key point is the degree of volatility will pretty much depend on what is a modified duration profile of your fund. So if you are running a very high modified duration of, let's say, 5, 6, 7, then your clients will have to be okay with a lot of sharp negative returns in their funds. But if they're running some 2 years, 3 years modified duration, still they will have some bit of negative impact on their funds as and when the yields move up. But if you are completely at the lower end, you will have very minuscule impact of the interest rates moving up. So this is, the volatility will primarily depend on what kind of portfolios your clients are holding. The third is that we also need to position ourselves for the rising yield environment, especially for the clients who are entering right now. So now the key question is, why do we think that yields are going to go up over the next or at least for the next 1 year? We do not know as to how long it will go. I think the primary reason why we think this is happening is because of the government borrowing. So the government borrowing has especially after the budget. So if you really look at it, the real spike in yields started only after the budget, because what has happened is that the government has gone really aggressive in terms of the fiscal deficit target, and it has clearly told that we are going to borrow a large amount and going to spend so that our economy is able to recover. So the number is close to around 6.8% of GDP is the fiscal deficit, and in fact last year it was 9.5%. So which means that the government is going to borrow a lot. So what is lot? Government is expected to borrow somewhere close to 12 lakh crores in the coming fiscal year. So to put that in context, before the pandemic happened, last year the number was supposed to be close to around 7.8 lakh crores. Now obviously after the pandemic happened, the number was revised to somewhere close to 12.8 lakh crores. But just think about it, it was sub 8 lakh crores, which was what was planned last year, and now the number was almost last year was almost 13 lakh crores, and this year it's going to be almost 12 lakh crores. So that's like put together, it's almost like a 25 lakh crores in a 2-year span, where usually it would have been roughly around 16-17 lakh crores. Okay, so that's the impact of the pandemic. So net it means that if the government is going to borrow such a huge number, somebody on the other side will have to absorb it. There is also the 80,000 crore additional borrowing that they're doing, which again came as a surprise in the budget. So net, the broad picture is that, and again, the other factor is that they have also told that it is not a one-shot higher expenditure that I'll be doing for the next 1 month or next 1 year. It is basically going to continue for the next 4 years, and then eventually I'll get back to whatever was the original fiscal consolidation plan. But for the next 4 years, we are going to be on the aggressive side. So which means that the borrowing is going to be elevated for a long period to come. And again, state governments are equally expected to borrow a lot as well to revive all their individual state economies. So net, the broad key picture is that governments are going to borrow more. And whenever you are borrowing more, it means that more bonds will be issued. And whenever there's a lot of borrowing happening, obviously on the other end, the bond market will want to get a higher yield for it, because everybody knows that government is desperate to borrow, and everybody knows the number, right? So which is why there is an upward pressure on the yields. And then two, all of us know that the RBI has clearly indicated that most likely there is no more rate cuts, and which is almost like a given at this juncture, unless and until something dramatically changes. So there's going to be no more rate hikes. The third is RBI also clearly told that all the excess liquidity that they pumped in. Now, by what I mean by liquidity is, technically it means that banks have a lot of money which they are not right now lending. So which means they have excess money which is getting parked in RBI. Right, so a lot of liquidity was parked just to ensure that the banks are able to lend it out at unbelievably low rates. Now RBI has clearly told that all of this, it will be slowly removing it off. So the CRR, which is the portion of bank deposits which they're supposed to keep with the RBI, was cut to 3%. Now it will again go back to 4% in the next 1 to 3 months. And then a lot of the measures they are slowly going to remove it. Now, obviously, it won't be like in one shot, but they will make sure that they gradually take it out, because excess liquidity at a time when economy is recovering means that banks can go berserk and suddenly start lending left, right, center, and which can also lead to inflationary pressure. So RBI has to do the balancing act. And then there's also the possible inflation number going up, because one, economy is going to recover, which like all signs are pointing towards that. And also commodity as a segment, and most of the commodity prices have gone up globally, and all of us know that petrol prices have also gone up significantly. So all these also mean that there can be an inflation pressure coming up. And net currently, if you look at our bond yields, it is probably at a decadal low. So the starting point is also very, very low. The 6th point is that global yields have also seen a significant increase in yields in the last 1 month. So almost globally, the worry is that inflation can pick up, and hence all the global bonds have also gone up. So overall, we think government on one end, and overall, both India and globally, there is the risk of inflation getting back. And the third point is, which is also getting reflected in global yields. So net, we think that there is a lot of pressure towards which can push the yields higher. Okay, so this is on one end. Now, why do we think it will be more gradual and not like suddenly shoot up over the next 1 or 2 months? Is because of the RBI governor. Now, RBI on one side clearly knows that if they let the interest rates go up dramatically, it also means that the government will have to pay more for borrowing. So it's like, let's say we are taking a loan, and now the loan is available, 10-year loan is available at 6%. For some reason, if it goes to 6.5% or 7%, then it means that for the large amount that I'm borrowing, I'm almost paying 0.5% or 1% extra. So RBI has clearly indicated that it will do whatever possible from its side to ensure that the number stays close to 6%. Now, while it's a Herculean task, but the point is RBI, the one thing which I've always acknowledged is that never underestimate a central banker in terms of the tools that they have. So RBI has clearly indicated, and in fact, a few days back, there was an interview where he tried to talk the market saying that we will be doing a lot of measures to ensure that there's no abrupt sudden increase in yields. So because RBI also knows that if they suddenly let the yields increase, one, it'll hamper the government borrowing program, and two, it'll also it can probably impact the pace of the economic recovery. So net, our sense is that RBI will try different measures to absorb this huge borrowing program, and it might keep announcing some measures, and at the same time, all its measures to reduce the liquidity and all that will be in a very, very phased and very, very careful manner. So it will basically be a fight with RBI on one side, and on the other side, you will have the huge government borrowing and the inflationary risk and the global risk on yield. So all three on one side and RBI on the other side, it will be a tug of war between them, which will happen over the next 6 months to 1 year, which is why you will have a few days where interest rate, where yields move up, have a few days where yields come down, and hence your bond portfolios, depending on the modified duration, especially higher modified duration portfolios, will see a lot of volatility in their portfolios. So net, how do we handle this? For us, it's very simple. The key number to look out for is the modified duration. So the lower the modified duration, the lesser will be the volatility. So primarily, our basic way in which we are positioning right now is that for clients who are entering now, who have a very short time frame, let's say 6 months or up to 2 years, we predominantly want to stick to the less than 1 year kind of a modified duration segment, which technically means that if you have a 6 months to 2 year period, stick to money market, low duration or ultra short term funds. Don't even go to short term funds, because again, like the idea is that while it might still be okay, but the point is the moment the client puts the money immediately and then he sees some fall in the next 1 or 2 months, and it'll take another 3 months or 2 months to recover that, then it becomes a very, very difficult experience for the clients. And hence our idea is to become a little more conservative and extend by 1 year the usual time frame. Usually this would be like 6 months to 1 year. Now it becomes 6 months to 2 years. And usually what was 1 year to 3 years now becomes 2 to 4 years. So out of 2 to 4 years, we're basically trying to balance it out. For really conservative clients, we can still stick to money market, low duration or ultra short term. But if some client really wants to slightly take higher risk and is okay with the volatility, you can look at short term corporate bond funds or banking and PSU, and you can split it 50-50%, or you can split it based on your convenience. And only for clients who have above 4 years, we will be looking at a slightly higher exposure to short-term corporate bond funds or banking, because primarily because these funds usually run modified duration profiles in the range of 1 to 4 years. Now, we do not know how well the fund managers will be able to manage or adjust this. So roughly, if you look at it, most of them currently are running at between 2 to 3. So which means that if interest rates for some reason move up by 50 bips or let's say 1%, then it means that it will get multiplied by 2 or 3. So net, it means that your funds are looking at a 1% to 2% decline over the net YTM. Net YTM is already at 4 to 5%. So which means that you are looking at a 2 to 3% kind of a return for the next 1 year. Now, eventually it will pick up because it's over an interest rate cycle. Again, during the next interest rate decline cycle, all these funds will do well. So only if a client has a long time frame can he look at both the phases, because if you're entering at a yield declining phase, it's always positive because you get the upside first. Then if you're getting the downside, it's still okay. But now you're like it's like you're entering a equity market when the market is falling. You know that eventually it'll recover, but the feeling is that why should I have to take the decline first? Couldn't we have waited? So it means that a lot of clients will come back to us saying that, why didn't you ask me to wait? Why did you have to hurry? Because if I just had it in my bank FD account, I would have got positive return. So which is why it's very, very critical that we're able to manage expectations well at this current juncture. But broadly, our simple call is that we are looking at an environment where interest yields can go up. And this again means that we will have to position all our portfolios in such a way that we are taking very, very low modified duration in our portfolios. And I think probably after 1 year or 1.5 years, once we get some more clarity and depending on where we are in the market cycle, at some point in time, we can again go back to increasing the modified duration profile. But I think the next 1 year is a phase where we will all have to be contented with a lower returns from debt funds, slightly higher volatility profile for higher modified duration funds. And again, if you ride it out peacefully over the next 1.5 years, and then there'll be a time when again we'll have to go aggressive and we can make a significant kicker in returns. But the key underlying point is next 1 year is not a year where we can where if we attempt to improve returns and try to do anything fancy, it might lead to a very difficult experience for our clients depending on the interest rate volatility. So our broad call is that for the next 1 year, we will have to be a lot more conservative and be okay and ride this out without putting our clients through too much of volatility. So that's the broad thing that I wanted to communicate for today. Thanks everyone. So we can open the floor for questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Arun. This was very learning session. So please post your question and answer questions in the chat box. Yeah, Arun, we have got some questions. What do you think about floater funds?
Yeah, so the way in which floater funds are positioned is that so everybody thinks saying that floater funds are a no risk bet. That is that if interest rates go down, the interest rates will the yields will automatically come down. And if interest or if yields go up, let's say today it's 5%, or let's say today it's 4%, and tomorrow it goes to 5%, it'll automatically reset to 5%. And there is absolutely no impact on the underlying. Now, technically, this would have worked fine if we had genuine floating rate instruments. Okay. Now, the real problem is that in India, we do not have too much of actual floating rate instruments, simply because think of it, right? If let's say you and I have to lend our money, okay, and somebody is going to borrow, okay, if I have to borrow money at this juncture, the idea would be to lock the rates at the lowest possible. So right now, if I am a Reliance, I would be able to borrow money at 4% or let's say 4.5%, 5%. So technically, it means that I would like to lock it for 2 years or 3 years. Why would I go for a floating rate fund? Because I know that I am getting probably one of the lowest ever borrowing rates that the Indian market has seen in the last 10 years. So why in the world would I go for a floating rate paper at this juncture? So technically, it means that the floating rate funds, while they are ideally supposed to invest in floating rate papers, unfortunately, there is no floating rate paper available, especially when the interest rates are expected to go up, simply because none of the borrowers will want to go into a floating rate system. They will all want to lock in at the original lower yields that they are getting right now. Okay, so what these funds do is they synthetically construct it. So which means that they buy a paper similar to what they normally do, and on top of it, what they do is they also buy something called OIS, which is overnight index swaps. So they synthetically construct it, which technically, which in simple terms means that you still run the modified duration risk. So what we did was we looked at all the floating rate funds. We looked at the environment where interest rates moved up, and you take any floating rate fund, be it Birla, HDFC, any floating rate fund, and you see the modified duration profile during the starting of the month, and then you check what is the volatility. You will find that it is almost similar to any other normal fund with the similar modified duration fund. So if the floating rate is running a modified duration of 1.5 years, it will pretty much have a very similar kind of a volatility profile. So what we have seen is that while floating rate is theoretically a good construct and it is supposed to work, but in India, because we do not really have the underlying papers and it is synthetically constructed, there will definitely be volatility, and the volatility will also be based on, sometimes the volatility might be completely reverse also. So sometimes nothing will happen in the normal market, but this might either go down or go up based on the OA swaps that they've got. So it's a slightly complicated way in which it works, but net what we have seen is that these funds will again get impacted based on the underlying modified duration profile. So the whole idea is it's not a free lunch, because if it was a free lunch, all of us would only be investing in floating rate funds, which eventually we will all discover in the course of the time. But again, yeah, floating rate funds are not a free lunch. So the best way to avoid volatility would be to reduce the modified duration.
How increase in yield have impact on equity market?
It really depends, because if it is happening in a period where your economic growth is weak, then usually it will have a negative impact. But if you look at the period between 2003 to 7, so when the recovery economic growth was also very high, then the markets kind of don't worry too much on an increasing yield. But if the yields are right now, it looks like the economic growth is slowly coming back, and there's also a global tailwind because a lot of fiscal stimulus has gone. So which is why it would still be okay, because net while the economic recovery is back, there might be some volatility on the global side, and there might be some FII outflows if there is a significant hike in yields in the US. So there'll be short-term volatility, but if you take a longer time frame of 3 to 5 years, if the underlying economic growth and the PAT growth is in place, net this shouldn't impact equity markets too much. But obviously there will be that near term impact as and when that happens, unless and until it's like a dramatic move. If it is more on expected lines on a gradual note, equity markets should still be fine.
Yeah, another question here is, what about investing in bank FD now?
Yeah, so I think bank FD, again, as if you don't lock it for like too long, so let's say you don't lock it for 2 years, 3 years, if you are just looking to temporarily ride the tide out by for maybe next 6 months or 1 year, because see, at some point in time, if you will start getting better yields, and there might be also an environment where the yields will come down, because it's an interest rate cycle, right? So net it will go up at some point in time, and it will also come down. So at that point in time, that environment where yields are coming down, debt funds will easily outperform bank FDs by 2-3%, depending on the modified duration profile. But again, as I told, in this environment, bank FDs and a debt fund will more or less be similar in returns, but it will be for the short run period. So make sure that if you are opting for a bank FD, do not opt for do not lock in for a long duration, maybe 6 months or 1 year. It should more or less be similar to what the returns will pretty much be similar to what you get in a debt fund. There is no way in which debt funds can like disproportionately outperform bank FD in this environment without taking credit risk, and that is something that we are not taking at the juncture. So as you rightly told, bank FDs and debt funds will more or less kind of have very similar returns over the near term.
Can you throw some light on rolling down strategy adopted by some mutual funds?
Yeah, so rolling down is a very simple strategy. So what they do is they decide on a time frame. So let's say if I'm buying so what happens in normal funds is that the average maturity profile is maintained at, let's say, 2 years or 3 years. So which means the modified duration will also be 2 years or 3 years, depending on whichever is the fund which is playing that. So it means that at all points in time, so let's say if I right now lend my money and then get a paper for 3 years, and after 1 year it becomes a 2 year paper. After 2 years it becomes a 1 year paper, right? So at that point in time, what I do is I will move out of the paper and then again get into a 3 to 2 year paper. So most likely they will want to maintain their duration at around 2 to 3 years, depending on that segment. So some other segment might want to maintain it between 1 to 2 years. Now, what a rolling down does is it's more like a replica of FD or replica of an FMP, where they will buy a 3 year paper and they will let it run. So which means whatever is the net YTM that you see, and if let's say the average maturity of that fund is 3 years, if you hold it for 3 years, you will exactly pretty much get the net YTM returns. So let's say IDFC corporate bond fund is a rolling down strategy. It might run somewhere close to 2.5 years average maturity. So check what is the net YTM, and if you hold for 2.5 years for your client, at the end of 2.5 years, you will get exactly the what is the net YTM that you're seeing. And then again, Axis runs a banking and PSU, which is roughly around, if I remember correctly, it is somewhere close to 1.5 years. So which means that if net YTM right now is, let's say, 4%. Okay, if you hold for 1.5 years, in between it might go minus, it might go plus. That if you don't worry, but if you only hold it for 1.5 years, you will net get the net YTM. So the way to look at a roll down strategy is that whatever is the average maturity, if you hold for that period, more or less you will end up with a return close to net YTM. Now it is more like locking the fund at that particular return, but the key advantage is that you can move out of the fund any point in time. Unlike an FMP where you lock it at a particular rate and then you don't have the liquidity, it is, you can think about it as an open-ended FMP, so, or an open-ended FD. Like if you hold for that particular average maturity, you will get the net YTM as your return. If you don't want, you can move out. But again, in intermediary, there will be volatility if at all interest rates move up, but that won't affect your final returns as long as your expectation is around the net YTM level. So you will have different funds available in different fund houses with different maturity profiles. So if you say that I want only 1 year and I want to lock my rates at 4.5% or whatever is the number, you find a fund which is running an average maturity close to that. Check the net YTM. If it matches, then you can lock your client's money. Not lock your client's money. Then basically you can invest in that. Not worry about anything else. After 1 year, you will exactly get close to your net YTM, and then you can take a call.
Can money market funds be considered as a substitute for liquid funds or ultra short funds?
Money market will have slightly higher modified duration profile. So maybe because they're technically they can they invest in papers at around 6 months to 1 year. But again, from a volatility point of view, if your client has maybe 6 months or at least a 1 year time frame, more or less the return wise you will end up with very similar returns. But yeah, but they will have slightly higher volatility than liquid funds or ultra short term. So if there is a 0.5% increase in yields for some reason over the next 3 months, then the impact will be slightly more on the money market fund because they run a slightly higher modified duration. They might run it at 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. Different funds run it at different levels, while a liquid fund might be very, very low. It might be 0.1, 0.2, or so something very, very low. So it's a plain math which I showed you, right? As whatever is the interest rate hike, or sorry, whatever is the yield increase, that will get multiplied by the modified duration. And because money market, see, all these money market and all these are names that we give, but net, if you, the way I simply understand is what is a modified duration, and that is whatever is the increase in yields, that will get multiplied by the modified duration, and hence that will be my negative impact. So, but yeah, the key is that the net YTM will also be slightly higher. So to a certain extent, it will be able to digest it, and despite that, end up giving you very similar returns to liquid funds. But the clients should most importantly understand this, because for them it will be like, why is my fund going through a few days of negative returns? Because it's pure math. If it goes up, then there will definitely be an impact, and that impact will be the multiplier effect of whatever is the modified duration of the fund.
What about arbitrage fund to avoid this hassles?
See, arbitrage fund again. If you really look at that category, if you think about it, it's a fairly interesting category, which can never become very popular simply because of the fact that it's a category which cannot absorb size. If you look at it, it's been there for 10-15 years, but none of the category, despite the fact that it has a taxation advantage, it is still not got popular, right? The reason is simple, because the way to look at the category is that over a 6-month period, you will get returns plus or minus 0.5% of a liquid fund return. Okay, that's the return expectation from the category. But the unfortunate part of the category is that whenever the category becomes popular, whenever there are articles being written and a lot of investors get into those funds, the returns become very, very low. So if you look at, I think 6 months back, we even wrote an article saying that everybody wanted to invest only in arbitrage funds. So we said that whenever there is a lot of interest in arbitrage fund category, the returns go down. Now, why does this happen? Because it's a category which cannot absorb a large size, because technically the arbitrage opportunities are very minuscule, or are like in a limited scope. So let's say if only two fund houses are participating for the same arbitrage, it's fine. But let's say if 10 fund houses are participating, and then what happens? They bid the prices down. So that arbitrage that you're getting, right? Let's say if it is 0.5% a month, let's say 10 fund houses are fighting for the same 0.5%. One fund house will say, I'll give you 0.4. Because the net the fund house has to definitely deploy the money. So what will happen is that when there's a lot of money coming into the category, the returns get depressed. And hence what happens, then the clients get disappointed, they move out, and then the returns again start to improve because a lot of people have moved out and the arbitrage opportunities are available for so it is like a demand and supply thing. So you will always see the cycle that 6 months it will do well, 6 months it will disappoint. So net my sense is if the clients can understand the return profile of the category, and two, it will be slightly more volatile than a liquid fund. There'll be a lot of days where you will see negative returns, and the drivers are fairly complex. Like what goes underneath an arbitrage fund is fairly complex. So to really understand why it is negative today or why it is positive some other day, fairly complex segment. But net for somebody who's okay with volatility, who has a 6 months to 1 year profile, time profile, and three, who wants to take the tax advantage, and four, the return expectation should be plus or minus 0.5% of liquid fund returns. So if these four are okay, then you can consider arbitrage fund. But again, you should remember that if it becomes popular, then the returns will dip for 2-3 months, and then all the clients should get disappointed and move out of the category, and that's when the returns will again come back. So it will always be a category of good returns, bad returns, good returns, bad returns. So it will be a cycle.
What can we expect from balance funds?
Uh,
Can we
ba-
expect from
okay. How do we evaluate the debt component of balance funds for modified duration? Is it? See, balance funds net, if you really look at it, it's only 30% of the portfolio, right? So net, the equity component will be adding to significant volatility. But from whatever I have seen, most of the balance funds have close to around 2 to 3 years modified duration. And again, within each and every fund house, they can take a call. So if they are taking a call that interest rates are going to go up, they will try and reduce the modified duration across all their funds. So it's a call which also the AMC takes. But from whatever I have seen, mostly they run close to around 1 to 3 year modified duration. Most of the times they are running at around 2 to 3 years.
Can we provide the list of open-ended funds that use rolling down strategy?
Yeah, we can probably collect that and then provide you. But some things which come like at the top of the mind is Axis Banking and PSU. IDFC runs it for corporate banks and IDFC Banking and PSU, and DSP runs it for DSP Savings and DSP Corporate Bond. So yeah, so these are things which I kind of, and not every fund house runs a roll down strategy. So we can give you a list of all the roll down strategies along with the maturities, so that if the just check, make sure that you also check the underlying portfolio quality. But otherwise, you can position it for whatever is the average maturity.
This is a similar question. How do we evaluate the debt component of balance funds for modified duration?
Yeah, as I told you, it will be around the 1 to 3 year as the modified duration. And the point is, it will also be displayed in the fact sheet. So you can simply verify it from the fact sheet as to what is the modified duration.
What do you think about dynamic bond fund?
Uh, Personally, I'm not too big a fan of dynamic bond funds, because I've realized that over long periods, when we did a lot of these analysis on dynamic bond funds, we have seen that most likely they end up with the returns very similar to short term funds, or which is short term, or let's say the current short term corporate or corporate segment, or the banking and PSU. That is, if you're looking at a fund with a modified duration profile of 1 to 3 years, most likely over a 3 year or over a 5 year period, the returns are very similar. But at the same time, dynamic bond funds also put you through a lot of fund manager risk, because the fund manager will have to precisely take the call, and it is also a lot more volatile. And we have seen that a lot of big fund managers also going wrong with respect to timing these market cycles. So our basic understanding is that it's a category which requires too many things to go right, and it doesn't give the client a good experience. So for us, it's like we are better off with a simple short-term fund or a corporate bond fund or a banking and PSU fund, which will net give us similar returns over a 3 to 4 year period.
Isn't it better to keep money in large cap equity with 5-year horizon?
See, with respect to equity, I guess that multi-caps can see, we from whatever we saw, both mid and small caps, the valuations are still okay. They're not very expensive, neither are they very cheap. But large cap, there is a segment which is getting slightly on the expensive side. So you will need to get into some funds which have not done great over the last few years, which are predominantly focusing on the cyclical part of the economy. So if that is the large caps that you're talking about, then it should be fine. But broadly, our sense is it's still better to see, the way we look at it is we always go by the 5-finger strategy, which is a lot more easier for us to construct portfolios. Simple 5 fingers. The small finger will stand for the mid and small cap bucket. So that is reasonably okay in terms of valuation. The ring finger will stand for quality. That's like very expensive right now. But again, the whole idea is that if something goes wrong in the economy, this will be the fund which will continue to do well. So second bucket will be quality. Third middle finger bucket would be value or contrarian. So last year when we picked this, it was doing dramatically bad. So there was no way somebody would have invested in iPro Value Discovery or IDFC Sterling. But now it's like 1 year, they've all been top performers. So again, the beauty of the whole 5-finger strategy, we do not know when what will start to perform. But if we combine styles together, we get a phenomenal experience. So third bucket was the value or contrarian, and the fourth bucket is the GARP or the growth and value combined. So basically, it's a blended bucket where like Parak Pare, Kotak, Mire, all most of the fund houses would be following this, and the fifth bucket would be the global bucket. So if we combine all these 5 together, we find that it's a very decent experience that we are able to get. But otherwise, we have moved away from this large cap, small cap, mid cap kind of a classification, and we've moved into the style based classification, because it becomes a lot more easier for us to handle clients, and also over a long run we are able to give a very very good experience to most of our clients, and it's worked out really well for us in the last 1 year. So maybe it's an approach which you can also consider. We've recently written a blog also on it. So yeah, so that's the way we really look at it. So within we've stopped looking at uh, whether to put it in large caps or mid caps, because it's again a very, within large caps you will have different styles, right? Mire did great, Axis did great, but now Axis is not doing well. It will be ICICI is doing well, Franklin is suddenly doing well after 10 years. So because the point is that underlying styles matter more than whether they are large cap or mid cap. So again, mid cap is again a style. So we really understood that going by styles will help you create a much better experience. So because within large caps there's a huge variety of styles. Thanks.
Two more questions, Arun. Can we recommend asset allocator funds for 2 to 3 years time horizon versus bank FD?
Yeah, asset allocator funds or balance advantage funds can be a decent bet. Visa is a bank FD. The volatility profile is completely different, because a bank FD is like the zero volatility. So if the client is only looking at returns and not and if only looking at returns and he forgets about the volatility part, then he might be disappointed. So you will have to set the expectation right, saying that it'll have an equity component and all that. So from a returns perspective, I think from a 3 to 5 year perspective, high likelihood that it'll give far better returns than pure debt funds or FD returns. But the again the cost for the higher returns is also that it will be significantly more volatile than an absolutely zero volatile product like FD.
Moving on to the last question, can we expect around 4 to 4.5% returns in liquid funds?
See, liquid funds, it'll right now they won't they are not anywhere close to, they are not close to that range, because if you simply look at the net to ITMs, you will get a hand. So right now you should only expect whatever is the net to ITM of the liquid funds. But if let's say interest rates go up by 0.5% or 1% from the current levels, maybe this kind of an expectation should be fine. But I would say that it is better to keep the expectation at the current YTM levels, which is still around the 3.5%, or maybe around sub 4% is where the current net YTMs are. But tomorrow, let's say for some reason if they move up to 4.5%, then you can definitely expect a rate. So the point is, you don't even need to ask me. It's as simple as just looking at the net YTMs, and that should be the expectation from a liquid fund. And if interest rates go up, the good part for liquid funds is they will get reset to the higher return expectation. So if you're a pure liquid fund holder, then you'll have to pray that yields go up. Now, if you're a higher modified duration fund holder, then you'll have to pray that yields don't go up, because then it will be a negative impact on your funds.
So we are done with all the questions and answers. So if anything is there, you can reach to our team. Now let me end the session. So fine.
Yeah.
Thanks all for participating. We will be sending you the feedback form. Please provide your inputs in that so that it will be helpful for our future meets. So goodbye everyone. Stay fit, stay safe. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.